I hear a lot of breathing. I think you're breathing into the thing. I can hear a lot of breathing. Yeah. Sounds like Darth Vader.
Okay, welcome to Black Men Speak. I'm your co-host J.R. Stewart.
And I'm your co-host, Tommy Duncan. Welcome, welcome. It is Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central, Jimmy.
Well, if it's Wednesday at 9 p.m., Tom, that means it's Black Men Speak. And
Absolutely.
just about every woke black person in America, plus the others, should be tuned into this show.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Absolutely. And the only folks who are not just, they just haven't found us yet.
Well, they haven't found this time, and unfortunately, that's going to be their loss because this is the most informative show on the internet, on social media, that deals with black topics and the issues that affect black people.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So go ahead, Jimmy.
I was going to say a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel, hit the notification button so you'll be notified when new shows are uploaded, which is every Wednesday at 9 p.m. And plus, next week we're going to unveil our new website that will feature links to all of our, not all of our past shows, but eventually we will get all of our past shows on there. But we have, I think, the last at least 3 months on there now. So we'll unveil that next week. And Tom, with that being done, oh, one more thing. I would like everyone who watch tonight, please come back, invite a friend, share the information, and please help us grow the channel by inviting one friend. Bring one friend next week with you. So go ahead, T.
Yes, absolutely. So we're gonna, talk a little bit tonight about something that we've discussed. I don't even think sparingly is the appropriate word, Jimmy, but
Right.
with us being two black men who take what we do in our community and our decisions and their consequences very seriously, it's interesting because, Jimmy, I don't know if you remember when you were young and you were
I
around your
do.
parents and talking to them. And, it's funny. I remember my mother telling me something when I was very young, and I thought I was half slick and could get away from stuff. Just like, son, you need to understand that I wasn't born this age.
Well, that is true, Tom. And and
Absolutely.
and unfortunately, a lot of the black wisdom is wasted on the youth who won't listen, Tom. There is a great deal of value and wisdom from older people who are trying to pass this on down to you, and they're doing it, Tom, not because they just want to preach at you or try to control your life or tell you how to live your life. They're passing this information on so you don't make the same mistakes in life that they did. They don't want you to
Yeah,
bump your head against the same wall they bumped their head on. And it would be a shame, Tom, if if the dent that my father made into the wall is the same dent that I widened in the wall and that his father started in the wall. That means we haven't made any progress, Tom. We keep hitting the same wall and bumping our head against it.
this is true. I think this is kind of what some people might call euphemistically the intergenerational curse. The same mistake keep happening from one generation to the next. But our topic for tonight's show, what your father may or may not have told you, and I'll call that out again, what your father may or may not have told you. So how do we get to this? So, we have a lot of different conversations on Jimmy, and typically what we're talking about is uniquely from a men's perspective. And, we talk about a lot of issues that are going on in our community, and you and I both agree, um, pretty much 99.999% that a lot of our issues can be resolved by resolving issues that are addressing black men in several different factors. And so, with that being said, Jimmy, what we want to do is talk a little bit about some of the things that we've learned, some of the things that we'd like to share,
Hmm.
some of the things that your father may have told you, some of the things your father may not have told you that will benefit you from decades to come. When I say you, I'm talking to hopefully some of the young brothers out there who are listening now or who will be listening later at some point in time. What we both know, Jimmy, and we've talked about on several occasions, is that three quarters, 75 plus percent of our households are single female headed
That's
households,
correct.
which means that the father and the primary image of maleness is not in the household on a day-to-day basis, and that does have some consequences that brings to bear. I mean, me myself, Jimmy, uh, I grew up in a single parent headed household. It was just my mother for a period of years and my father for a period of years, but I do not recall my mother and father being in the same household together because I was very young when they decided to divorce. But all that being said, Jimmy, we talk about real world circumstances, we talk about real world issues. And one of the things that our black men go through, our young black boys or young men go through just to a different degree. And a lot of that is very generational. And so, what we want to talk about tonight, Jimmy, are some of the pearls of wisdom that we've learned throughout the years. We'd also like to invite those of you who are watching our show to chime in, um, give us your thoughts, questions you'd like to ask. For young men out there who may be listening, wondering what this is all about and why is it relevant to me, um, there is something that
Well,
if
Tom,
you have,
hold on for a second. Why don't you give the number and let me post it?
sure, sure, sure. So there are a couple of numbers that you can dial into. The first one is 972-497 2280. That is 972-497-2280. And then also, I believe Jimmy is going to post a number
I don't have the
on
go-to
our.
number in the box. I didn't save it this time. My mistake. So we just have to go
Okay.
with the with our old number.
Okay. So if you do want to call in at any point in time, ask a question, make a statement, but make it brief because we're going to probably have a few people calling in today on one of various subjects. So let's get down to brass tacks. Let's talk about reflections on being a young man, and let's dig a little bit deeper in being a young black man in America and what that means and see where it flows.
Okay. Well, Tom, you talked about advice from fathers. I remember growing up as a kid, and it seemed that my father was very interested in making sure I understood how to manage my relationships in a household. He would make it very clear to me at a very young age that husbands don't take money from their wives to pay bills. He would tell me that all the time, over and over, that if you had a wife and she worked, you use that money to for savings, to buy school clothes, school supplies, for vacation. But under no circumstance do you take a cent from her to pay a bill in their household. That
Why?
the Why? Because it was important that a man is responsible for his castle. If you're the king of it, you're responsible. Your wife is your helpmate. She can help you with things, and of course, if you lose your job or something, fall on hard times, then she may have to step up. You may be forced at that point, but as long as you're able-bodied and have a job and capable, do not And basically, what he was pointing out, which is very useful advice today, is that you don't build your castle on two incomes. You do your absolute best to raise your family and maintain your wife and your family in a house that you can afford and that you can afford to pay the bills in, put food on the table. So that way, if you have a second income, great. Because one of the things he would tell me, Tom, is that when he married my mother, she was just getting out of school, but she was working toward a teacher's degree. She was also going back to school at night to get her master's. She ended up getting two masters. But he told me that, hey, I don't know what she's going to want to do. I don't know if she's going to want to stay at home and raise children. I don't know if she's going to go back to school. She's going to want to work. But it doesn't matter to me because whatever decision she makes, I'm not going to take that away from her and tell her that she has to work because we need the money to keep a roof over head. That he would tell me he would never be jammed up that way, and that's the way I've lived my life. That wherever we live, I don't care if my wife works or not. She can go to school, she can go start a business, she can go do whatever she wants to. but I'm not going to take a dollar from her to pay a bill around here. That's all going to be handled by me because it just minimizes problems in the long run. I always say that I am a benevolent dictator in my house, and so the buck absolutely stops with me.
So with that particular model, and I understand taking full responsibility for your household. It's it's biblical. I mean, when you talk about the responsibility of a man, the responsibility of a woman, we're talking in a husband and wife context. There are a lot of conversations to be had there. What we do understand now is that a lot of times, Jimmy, we've seen that roles have been confused because
Yes.
quite frankly, are making is just as much in a lot of cases more than the men in their lives, or more than the husbands in their lives. And quite frankly, it has been a bane for some men and women because of the confusion in role and responsibility and how that ties back to the income that is brought into the house. So, for instance, let's say you have a man, he may be a teacher, he may be making 60 grand, but his wife could be an attorney or a physician, and let's say she's making, 200, 250 grand. Well, in that case, Jimmy, it makes some men a bit anxious because she's making more money. And for some people, sometimes women, sometimes not, they feel that they should ultimately be calling the shots since they make more money.
Well, Tom, I understand that, and I've been in that situation. Many, many years ago, I was engaged to a lady who made more money than I did. She made about $120,000 back then, and I made $78,000 at the time I was working at either UUNet or MCI. And we were planning on getting married. Um, we couldn't decide on which house to live in, so we were both going to sell our houses and buy a new house. Of course, the house she wanted was a lot more than the house I could afford on my salary. And that became the breaking up point because even though we had talked about this, she didn't really think I was that serious. And that together we could afford a really nice house, but that wasn't the point. Is that once again, I'm not going to take a dollar from you to pay a mortgage payment. And if I can't afford to pay the mortgage payment and the bills on this house, we're going to have to downsize to something smaller, period. And, and by aggressively saving, Tom, in 4 or 5 years, we could have paid that house off in cash and been done with it. And sold that house and used it as a down payment on a much larger house with the same financial footprint that we had before the smaller house. So going off and getting into a bunch of debt early on in life, especially when you're just getting married, when you live up to your money, eventually, Tom, that can create financial stress if you get laid off and the house of cards start collapsing at that point.
I understand, Jimmy, and I think we're kind of bowling down that lane of relationships, which is kind of one of the three or four legs of a stool that every young man has to deal with at some point in time. One of those being relationships,
Yes,
with women, and there are a lot of things to deal with there, Jimmy, because quite frankly, on average, women are a little bit more sophisticated and they're a little bit smarter in certain ways than young men are at the same age, at the same time. In a lot of cases, men obviously have their strengths and their assets, and women kind of have theirs. And sometimes young women they grow up to be a little bit more mature at the same age as young men, and maybe things balance out a little bit, Jimmy. But in a lot of ways, sometimes they can run circles around you,
they
Jimmy.
can,
And
Tom.
before you have figured out what has happened, you are kind of in a situation where you're kind of following her lead as opposed to her following your lead.
That's
Now,
correct, Tom.
what?
Oh, well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I guess the question when we start talking about relationships with women, and let's be very clear that women have a tendency to be a little bit more mature than men do, especially in the younger years. What type of conversation should we be having with our young men as it pertains to relationships with women? Does that mean they should automatically be dating someone a little bit younger than them, or if they're dating someone who they're attracted to, but let's just say she may be a little bit more mature than him at that age? How do you handle that? How do you deal with that?
Well, I'm going to tell you this, Tom, from a life experience. First of all, the perfect woman is not found. You can go out there and look, and you can say, I'm looking for the right woman, but the right woman is made. And she is made, Tom, through your strength of character. And by you loving her correctly, you providing the security that she needs to come out of to come out of the shell that she's trapped in, which we call insecurity, and low self-esteem sometimes. If you love her the right way, she'll come out of all of that. And when she emerges, Tom, what happens is she becomes a perfect woman for you. Not necessarily for everyone else, but for you. And if you don't give her those things, then all you're really doing is setting yourself up for a lot of pain. Come tell you right now, when you're dealing with an insecure woman, she cannot truly be happy. And when she's not truly happy, Tom, I mean happy to the bone, happy, then you're going to have problems in your relationship and marriage. So, one, be strong. You can't be weak, and she's counting on you to be the rock in her life, and you're soft as butter. That doesn't mean that you have to try to rule with a hard fist, anything like that, or putting your boot on someone's neck. Because leadership is about responsibility and taking responsibility for those who are following you. So that's something we have to teach young men, not to be afraid of responsibility, because too many of our men are. And then the other thing is, you've got to be the strength to her insecurity. You can't be weak. You need to be fair and just in everything that you do. You put your family first in every decision that you make. If you're not sure what to do, y'all sit down and talk about it. You pray on it, but in the end, you make the final decision and let her know, that I've accepted your counsel. This is why I think we should do this, and we're going to go forward together in this decision. And that's not to say that if it doesn't work out, she gets to point the finger at you and say, "Hey, I knew this wasn't going to work." No, it means that once the decision is made, you both accept it, and that's accepting faith and trust in you, which a lot of black women don't have, Tom, and black men. And it's not to say that they're not warranted for not having that faith and trust, because it needs to be earned. And a lot of black men have let black women down. We've done shows on that. So my advice to young black men now: one, be honest, be a man of your word, have strength of character, have a plan in life. Women like security, so when you share plans with them about the future, that helps them get out of their insecurity, because they're not wondering, what you're thinking and what plans you have for me and the kids or for our family, a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. So if she has to ask you where things are going, you've already failed in the planning department. So, develop a plan in life. Don't lie. Don't tell her you're going to the moon, and you're going to bring her back some space dust. And when she asks you, why haven't you got off the couch and went down to NASA and applied for an astronaut job, you get mad because she's calling you on your lie. So don't do that. Don't lie to women about what you're going to do. Demonstrate your strength by doing it. Strength of character and being honest. You don't have to lie to anybody. The woman in your life is not above you where you have to lie to her. Just be honest with you. And if you can be honest with her, Tom, and secure her in life, I guarantee you the woman that you get out of her is going to be 10 times more than you ever expected that you would have.
No, that's very good advice, Jimmy, and I appreciate you sharing that. That's definitely some truth there. A couple of other things that I'd like to add to that, and one area that
Hmm.
I'd like to put a pin in it, no erase, is having a plan, Jimmy.
Yes.
Because this is my thing. Throughout all of my life, when I look back at it, one thing that I stick to that I have learned over the years that I think it will serve a lot of young brothers and older brothers for that matter very well. If a woman cannot follow your lead, then you need to move on. If a woman cannot follow your lead, you need to move on. And where is this relevant? So we were talking a little bit earlier about folks who may be having some challenges because let's say that, the woman in a relationship may be working, may be making more than you are.
Right.
That is immaterial.
Right. It is, Tom. That's
Absolutely.
true.
Absolutely. And so at the end of the day, if you're with a woman who's making twice as much, four times as much money than you, and she disrespects you because of the amount of money that she is making as compared to you, and she cannot follow your lead, then you need to move on. Let me
Right.
let me guarantee you it will be nothing but trouble in the future. But This is also to say that you first have to have a plan. You
True.
have to have a vision. You have to understand where you are going and how you're going to get there. Now, you may not have all the answers right now, but you do need to have a vision. You do need to be getting off your behind, showing progress, and more so for yourself than anybody else. Because if a woman of substance sees a man of any age who's working towards something, and she really loves him, truly loves him, not just how cute he is, not what kind of clothes he has on,
A
not
car you
what kind of
drive.
car he has on,
Right.
but if she loves the man himself, then she will support him and she will be
Yes.
his help meet. And that's why they call it a help meet. Now, that's not to say that you're not going to support her goals,
Right.
her aspirations, and her dreams as well. But she has to see that you're going someplace in order to have some trust in you. And if she cannot follow your lead, then you need to think very seriously as to whether that is the right person for you. But first and foremost, one thing I've learned, stick to your guns. And when I say
Yes.
stick to your guns, if you know what you're looking for, where you're trying to go in life, and how you're going to get there, don't let anybody dissuade you of that. Whether that's I'm getting out of high school and I got an opportunity to go to a great college, and honey bunny back at home is saying, "Well, sweetie, I want you to stay here, or maybe you should do something else." Do not let, especially in your formative years, let anyone else sway you from reaching your goals in life, because more times than not, further in life, you're going to regret it. Make sure that you have your plan firm. Make sure you have your goals in order. And make sure that you stick to that. And if she truly believes in you, then whatever the circumstances are, she will continue to follow your lead. But stick to your guns first.
Right. And Tom, I want to add something to that before we go to the next topic, and that is stealing love. One of the worst things you can do to a woman is steal love from her. Because women are trusting. They believe you when you tell them how great life is going to be, all these things that you're going to do, which excites them. And the man they fall in love with, if it's 3 months down the road, she's saying, I don't know you, I don't recognize you anymore, that's because the lie that you told her in the beginning to win her over is not who you are. These are not the things that you're doing in life. And I've seen so many brothers who go through this cycle every 3 or 4 months, because it takes about that long to figure out that he's not doing anything with his life. The things that he told you were just lies. And then you have to figure out whether you want to stick with him and the lies or let him go. And it takes about 3 or 4 months before that happens, and all he does is just move on to the next woman with the same story and the same lie. So don't be that person, because that scars women, that makes them distrustful, that creates problems in their life. That when a good man does come along in their life, he's the one that has to clean your mess up, and all the other men who scarred her up, that causes her to be insecure in life about trusting someone and having a relationship with them.
Gotcha, Jimmy. So let's kind of talk about a couple of other things on the relationship side of the
Hmm.
equation, and then we can kind of move on to something else. And again, for those of you who are out there who you're listening, we have the chat line open. So if you have any questions or thoughts, feel more than free to jump in on the chat line. For those of you who'd like to call in, the number is 972-497-2280. 972-497-2280. So I'd like to put a couple of statements out there,
Okay.
and especially for you young cats out there, because I mean the fundamentals don't really change.
No.
Um, First statement: be very, very judicious about with whom you bring life onto the earth with. Be very, very judicious as to whom you bring life onto the earth with. What does that mean? Having children, getting married, building your future with someone. Let's be very clear. For those of you out there, it is no joke and not for the thin skin being a parent. And we've talked about this on several occasions, Jimmy. Um, most of our sisters are out there, most of our mothers are out there, raising children without, in a lot of cases, support from the father. Sometimes that means you got married for whatever reason, things didn't work out, and so you decided to move in the best interests of both people to help support the children. But in too many cases, you have women who are doing it by themselves, and the father is not involved. So one thing for the guys, we always advocate and support brothers. We have to be in the lives of the children that we bring onto this earth because we make a cataclysmic difference in the future by being a significant part of the sons and daughters that we help produce. But also on the other end, and this goes for the sisters too, but we're talking about the young brothers today, be very, very judicious and intentional as to who you produce life with because it has a lifetime of consequences. You make the right decision, you have a fruitful partnership for life, and you see a legacy that is going to last for generations and generations. But if you make one of those decisions that don't quite turn out the way it's supposed to, you can set yourself up for a lifetime of anxiety, pain, and decrease. And when I say decrease, I'm talking about decrease in the wallet. It can be very, very painful.
Well, that is true, Tom. And also, I would advise the single mothers out there to do everything you can to encourage and allow the fathers into your children's life. I know sometimes there's temptation to use children as pawns for negotiation between yourself and your child's father. I would hope that you wouldn't do that. That's operating in bad faith, and don't put your kids in the middle that way. But do what you can. Don't be a hindrance to fathers being engaged in their children's life. Don't use them as pawns and keep them away from the fathers simply because you guys have had some kind of disagreement over money or over his relationship or your relationship with someone else. Just don't bring the kids in it that way.
And a couple of things that I'll add, not to that particular subject line. I'm just kind of thinking back, to when, I was younger, we were both younger at that point in time. There's always typically, in every school, whether you're in high school or college or whatever it is, there's going to be the girl that, or the couple of girls that everybody's going after. I mean,
Right.
oh, she's cute, she's, beautiful, she's the popular girl, whether she's a cheerleader or whatever it is. And everybody wants, that particular woman or these few women over here. And Jimmy, if I go back today and think about it, there were a lot of literal pearls that were overlooked because maybe they were the nerdy one, maybe
Right.
they were the shy one, maybe they were the one that wasn't so popular because they weren't on the drill team or they maybe they were a late bloomer.
Right.
But gentlemen, all that being said, there are a lot of pearls out there that are literally being overlooked just because they're not the popular one. Maybe it's the one with the big Coke bottle glasses. But by the time she gets to be a book,
Coke bottle time.
Coke bottle glasses. But hey, when she gets to be an adult, she's a late bloomer and is a precious jewel. So all that being said, one thing that I learned in my early 20s, always develop good friendships. And I'm not just talking about, with the fellas and with the guys, but one of the things that has helped me exponentially, Jimmy,
Hmm.
is building strong, healthy relationships with women friends as well. And I mean strictly platonic, because I'll be honest with you, they have gotten me out of a lot of trouble. Because let me be very clear, a woman understands how a woman thinks,
Right.
and to have good women friends in the right places can save you a ton of heartache and grief.
Well, Tom, I want to segue on something that you just said. It's very important, and that is the word think. When you're in a relationship with a woman, you have to make sure that um, whatever struggles that you may have and negotiations and battles and going back and forth, that one, that you're willing to compromise because it's your job to keep the peace in your castle, in your kingdom. The other thing is you can't do that if you're emotionally unhinged. You the emotional battle, she's going to win every time. I can tell you that right now. You're not going to win that battle. Uh, and your job is to stay cool, somewhat collected if you can, and always think logically as to what is best for everyone in the family. Not for her, not for you.
But Jimmy, how do you do that in the midst of all of the
Tom, it is
anxiety?
hard. It takes a lot of practice and
How do you practice?
discipline.
How
Um,
do you even practice?
sometimes you have to walk away. You know, when you find yourself getting heated and worked up and puffing, and just walk away for a while. Come back later on after you had a chance to think about it. But do not sit there and engage emotionally back and forth. I'm gonna tell you right now, one, you're not gonna win, and a lot of times, sometimes when you don't win, you both end up losing. I mean, look at the young girl that's been in the news now. Her and her boyfriend going cross country, fighting and arguing in the car, and he's missing. They can't find him, and she's dead. So this is what happens when people get into these emotional battles. It's your job to keep the peace in your castle, in your kingdom. So sometimes you have to walk away from it. If she has truly beaten you at that battle, just walk away. Don't try to muscle her. Don't try to fight. Certainly don't get physical. And now that you realize that you lost that battle, walk away. Come back and fight another day. But in the end, like you said earlier, make sure you have a plan and that you're sticking to it. Because you can always go back to, hey, we've talked about this already. This is part of our master plan. This is what we're doing. We agreed to save this. We agreed to do this. We're not going to go out and buy a new car and get and have our plan derailed. We'll buy a car later. And as long as she can understand she's reasonable, and you can explain things in a reasonable way, I think you can settle probably 99% of whatever disagreements you have. But if you engage in the back and forth time and you let that become your pattern of how you deal with stuff, then it's going to be a long, rocky road.
Yeah, yeah, good point there. And another thing, when you talk about the heat of the moment, about the heat of the moment arguments, under no circumstances should you be hitting another woman.
Yeah, do not get physical with her.
Yeah, do not hit a woman. Do not abuse a woman in any way. And let me be very clear. They can say some very, very abrasive things
Cut
when
you
they
to the
get
bone,
there.
Tom, with their words. Yes.
Absolutely. And
It
any
hurts.
woman who is honest knows that when a woman decides she wants to cut and dig deep, she can do it.
Yes.
But you have got, as Jimmy said, to walk away from the situation. If you feel yourself about to raise your hand at a woman, never strike a woman. I don't care whether it's someone who's cussing you out. It's not going to typically work very well in the end if you end up beating a woman, abusing a woman, or hitting a woman anyway. Of course, that goes along with always respect your mother, always respect, the women in your family, always respect your elders. But even with some of these young women, and let me be very honest with you, quite frankly, you may not think she's worth respecting. But you have got to restrain yourself. You've got to walk away from the situation. And you have to have enough respect for yourself
Right.
long term in order to maintain your composure and move on.
Well, Tom,
You know,
that brings up another point that sometimes women don't respect weak men. So if you don't have strength of character to stand up for yourself, stand on what's best for your family, and stick to your plan, once she finds out that you can be manipulated, that you're going to cave, you're going to give in, um, once she determines that you are a weak person, you have weak character, she's not going to respect you at that point. There's no way in the world she can respect you and value you at that point when she thinks of you as a weak person. So you have to be strong. That doesn't mean beating up on anyone or putting your hands on anyone. It means that you have to be disciplined.
so let's say if you're one of those persons who is a bit emotional and you have a tendency to kind of fly off, how do you build that discipline? How do you build that strength of intellect so that number one, you can maintain control of yourself, and or number two, you don't have women who are taking advantage of you or someone who is, for lack of a better term, exploiting what some consider to be, oh, he's a nice guy. I don't really like him, but I'm going to get what I can while I can.
Right. And Tom, I think we've all had our experiences with a few women early in our lives who have taken advantage. Um, and so when you're dating, this is where you hone your skills. This is why it's important to go into a dating relationship as a forerunner to marriage. This is where you hone your skills. This is where you practice. and become more disciplined. You're certainly not going to have it in your first relationship. You're not going to have it in your second. But hopefully, by the time you get to maybe your seventh or eighth relationship, that you have learned a few things. You have become better at managing a relationship at that point, and where you can say, "Hey, I'm ready to settle down with someone now."
Gotcha. And let's get down to brass tacks, and then we can kind of pivot to another area. Um, when it comes right down to it, and this is not for everybody. This is not advice for everybody. But one of the things that I've learned,
Hmm.
and is that your your needs change.
Right.
Your body changes, your mind changes as you mature and as you progress in life. And so, what you need in the 20s is not the same as what you're going to need in the 30s, the same for the 40s and 50s, and so on. And the same is for women. What your desires are, what your wants are. In your earlier years are going to change, and so when you build relationships, you talk about marriage, and you talk about building a relationship together. Understand that you are going to change emotionally, you are
Right.
going to change physically, and hopefully you're going to change intellectually. And understand that when you are managing a relationship, and what Jimmy's talking about in terms of being honest, communication is the most important asset that you have in a healthy
Sure.
long-term relationship of any sort. I recommend, even though it's not for everybody, that as a young man getting out of school, take the time to get established, figure out where you're going in life, travel, work, save some money, start investing. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Make sure that you have a strong foundation before you decide that you're going to settle down with someone,
Right.
so you yourself understand where you're going and what's important to you. For those of us who got married at a very early age, had children at a very early age, you know, as a young person, you don't really have time to get to know yourself and what your needs are before you're responsible for a spouse and multiple children. And so, if you can, if you can, take some time to get to know yourself. Do some of the things that you enjoy doing, whatever that is. Spending time alone, building your career, traveling, just doing the things that you want to do in life. And once you've had a chance to do that, then start making sure that once you have your identity in place, you're also with another person who has their identity intact. You're both secure. You don't have to be completely comfortable financially because it's all work in progress. But at least you both know where you're going. You have a conversation and figure out whether your plans can actually coexist and meet together. But at a minimum,
Right.
Jimmy, I would say at least wait until your late 20s at the earliest if you
Right. You
can.
need a
But
little. You
take
need a few years of dating time to get to that point. And something that you said, the honest communication. I mean, brutally honest. Before you get too serious with someone and then discover one party doesn't want to have kids or don't want to live in a certain city, and you don't want these deal breakers to be popping up late in a relationship. Only other thing I would add to that, Tom, is young people today don't bring the people that they're serious about around the old folks anymore, around their parents and kin folks. And back in the daytime, this process was important. And there were three things that would the response would be from your kin folks when you brought someone that you were dating around them. Either this person is not good for you, this person is good to you, or they're good for you. And you always wanted the good for you because that means that was an approval for you to move forward if you wanted to. If she was just simply good to you, that means this is a surface relationship. And she may have some other motives for the reason why she's just good to you. Or if she's just not good for you, the old folks will tell you that. They will put you to the side and give you their feedback on what they thought about this person that you were trying to get serious about. And sometimes it takes other eyes to see what you're blinded by lust or whatever, by love, that you may not see.
absolutely. Let's kind of pivot to another area, Jimmy.
Sure.
Money and wealth.
Money.
Uh, Man, I'm going to tell you this. This is one subject that I wish I was like the young people who are listening to this call. If you are in your late teens or in your early 20s, I am very jealous right now.
Oh
I'm very
man,
jealous knowing what I know right now,
yeah,
wishing that I could be your age again. Why is that, Jimmy? Because the biggest asset that folks in their late teens and early 20s, even let's say their early 30s, if they get started late, is time.
yes,
Time. When we start talking about making money, creating wealth, creating intergenerational wealth, the most important asset by far that you have is time. And you don't have to make a lot of
no,
money
you don't.
in order to create a lot of wealth. Let's be very clear. There are people who make hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars, who are broke.
A lot of
And
our
I know you
athletes are,
know
Tom.
that. Absolutely. And that's because they are fiscally, some of them are fiscally undisciplined. There are a few athletes who were responsible enough or who were fortunate enough in order to get mentors to kind of help guide them in the right direction. But there are a lot of folks out there who have made a lot of money and blown a lot of it. One, and he'll admit to himself, Mike Tyson.
Right.
When you think of somebody who made, I don't know, Jimmy, during his
Three hundred
career,
seventy-five million dollars in his lifetime, Tom. Over a quarter of a
75
billion
million.
dollars, a third of $1 billion in his lifetime. And I mean, he's at a young age, and
Yes,
most of it's blown.
absolutely. So, all that being said, we're not going to talk about Mike, but Mike has admitted, to this himself. But he was kind of a different character. If there's anything that I could tell you today, it doesn't matter how much money you're making. It doesn't matter whether you're making, I don't know, $2,000 a month or $10,000 a month. Some of y'all are
Right.
out there doing some good things. Always make sure that you're investing at least at a minimum, if you can, 10 to 20% of what you're earning, saving it until you can invest it. And the earlier you can start investing it, you will thank yourself many, many times over again as you start hitting the 30 marks and the 40 mark and the 50 mark. And the key is to be disciplined. And it doesn't really even matter the amount. The most important thing is the discipline, Jimmy.
Right.
If it's just $10, if it's just $10, starting out with $10 and just putting it in the bank and doing that every time you get a paycheck, every time you get some money, putting some of that money away until you've accumulated enough until you can start investing, whatever it is. Whether if it's in the stock market, if it's in precious metals, if your thing is crypto, or whatever it is. If you start right now, while you're still in your late teens or your early 20s, even your early 30s, if you can. No, it's not whether you can, you just need to do it. You will thank yourself over and over and over again. Jimmy, it's very simple. The rule of compound interest and the rule of 72.
Well, Tom, that is true, and there may be some who are listening, especially our young people who may not know what those rules are. But let me add to that, Tom. For a very long time, I thought you went to school, you got a degree, and then you went to work for people. You sold your time and skills and knowledge to someone else for a paycheck in exchange for money. And I just thought that was the way that things worked. And it wasn't until later in life that I faced someone who said, "If you're so smart, why aren't you rich?" And Tom, I can't tell you what a profound question that was. That I had to stop and think about it for a very long time, and I started asking myself, "Well, why aren't I rich?" I'm a pretty smart person, so and it was late in life, Tom, that I really got into the investment game. Um, to the point now when you start having money come to you that you don't have to work for, man, that excites me. I stay up at night studying things. When I'm making money off investments, and I'm thinking, man, I have this money coming in that I did not have to work for. Other people are doing the work because they have borrowed money from me and put it to work, and then they're giving me a return on that money. So like Tom says, start early in life. Be disciplined. Don't save up a few $1,000s and then pull it out and go buy a car with it, because now you're exchanging wealth for a depreciating asset. And all too often, Tom, that's the secret to why working poor people stay working because they need money, and they stay poor because they keep exchanging money of that's depreciating with inflation for another asset that's depreciating even faster, a car, jewelry, other things that you want in life that are not making you any money. So you have to continue to work harder, longer, trying to get more money to maintain your life. So you're right, Tom. At least 10%, 20% if you can. Pay yourself that off the top. Find safe ways to invest your money. If you don't know anything about investment, put it into some kind of IRA, 401k, or money mutual fund. Hell, go buy triple E saving bonds.
Absolutely. And Jimmy, I think you hit something that a lot of people aren't going to get until maybe later in life. But if they get this early in life, Jimmy, this conversation will be well worth it. Most parents tell you to get a good education,
Yes.
get a job, work for money. But this is the contra side of that that a lot of people don't learn until later in life. Not focusing on you working on your money, but focusing on your money working for you.
Right.
And that is a completely different philosophy that most folks aren't very familiar with. And it changes the entire way that you think about your money because, most folks, if they're working for a job, and there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are working for themselves, that's fantastic. But for most folks, they think, okay, well, they don't even look at their whole dollar. They look at what they get. But if you consider, if you're at a job and you're getting a paycheck, well, they take taxes out typically. They take out medical insurance typically. And a lot of folks get caught up into trying to figure out how they're going to pay all of their bills. That's the first thing, and that's their first focus, and they're very anxious on that. But this is the other thing. Why would you pay someone other than yourself first?
True.
Why would you pay someone other than yourself first? Because I can guarantee you this: Uncle Sam is going to continue to take their slice of the pie. And I can guarantee you that on the most part, the bills ain't going to stop coming. Because even if you pay off, let's say, your house or some real estate, you're going to still have insurance, you're going to still have taxes, you're going to still have utilities. So in this case, it can be good to actually be selfish and say, you know what? I'm going to pay myself before I pay anybody else. Now, what I'm not telling you to do is to pay yourself so much and not pay your bills and get kicked out of your house or
Right.
get your car repoed. But pay yourself first and prioritize everything else. And let's be very clear. Jimmy brought up a very good point. All the other trinkets, when you look a year, 5 years, 10 years down the road, if you consider the all the sneakers, the $20 sneakers that some people buy, all the fancy shirts and fancy jeans that somebody buys, all the trinkets that somebody buys. For those of you who like to eat out once, twice, 3 times a day, practically every day, if you go back and track that money and you put it in an investment account, I can guarantee you you're going to get exponentially more value in 1 year, 5 years, 10 years than you are with those sneakers that are eventually going to get scuffed up, that are eventually going to fall apart, those clothes that you're eventually going to throw away. Live as a minimalist if you can. There's nothing wrong with having nice things. There's nothing wrong with being able to enjoy yourself. There's nothing wrong with having some comforts in life. But when you're starting early, I would highly recommend that you focus on being a minimalist and paying yourself first and investing as heavily as you can. So when you are still young and you get into your third, fourth, fifth decade in life, you will have a nest egg. You will be far ahead of your peers and your contemporary, and you will be thanking yourself. Let's be very clear: 40% of Americans today cannot afford a unexpected $1,000 expense. 40% of Americans.
Or go more than a month without a paycheck.
Exactly. A lot of people are living month to month. You have to start at a very early age building the discipline. It could be $1, it could be $10. It doesn't matter. It's the discipline.
But Tom, I'm going to pass on a secret that's not much of a secret. And there are a lot of people who know this, but a lot of our people don't. And that is setting yourself up as a corporation. Um, if you're lucky enough to be in a field where you can contract yourself out to a contracting company, and rather than work off a W-2 where they're taxing your entire income and giving it to the government, though you can work off what's called a 1099 or a corp to corp contract. That means whatever you're billing, you get the entire 100% of that. And there's nothing taken out. There's nothing taxed. There's no Social Security tax, Medicaid. There's nothing. You get all of the money, and then you take that money and you pay yourself. So if you're billing a company $175,000 a year, but you only need 25 to live, then you take that 175 and you stash it, or you and your accountant work it out, depending on what state you're in, and you pay yourself 25 because that's all you need to live off of. That's all you're being taxed on, and you can stockpile a great deal of money by working off a W, not off a W, off a 1099 or a corp to corp. If you're working off a W-2, Uncle Sam's getting their money off the top. And they're getting the biggest chunk of your money. It's almost like a partnership. If you don't do it right. But this is how wealthy people stay wealthy, Tom, because they don't give their money to the government. A lot of working people off W-2s give their money to the government. That's how the government stays funded. So find ways to keep your money because you earned it. If you want to give it to the government, give it to them. If you don't, find ways to keep it. But then the other thing is, if you can't work off a 1099 or corp to corp, and you're forced to work off a W-2 for whatever reason, then do as Tom said. When you get your paycheck, take some of it and pay yourself in an investment and forget about it. Try to do that long term. After 40 or 50 years, you'll be set for life, or you should be set for life.
Absolutely, Jimmy. And check the chat line. I don't know if there's anything on the chat line, any questions.
Um,
And while we're doing
no
that, we want
questions
to
so
keep,
far.
okay. We want to, of course, invite anyone who'd like to call in, 972
This is your last chance because we're running out of time here. So pick that phone up and start dialing the number. What was it? Nine
Absolutely.
seven two 497 2280. I'm surprised, Tom, we had one caller, even though we got very active viewership tonight.
Absolutely. And I'm speaking to young brothers out there. It doesn't matter whether you think you're going to be a pro athlete, or you're going to be a teacher, or you're going to be an astronaut. It doesn't really matter what your lot is in life. There is no reason why you cannot create wealth for you and or for your family within your lifetime. I mean, obviously there are some folks out there, young cats who are entrepreneurs. And thanks, David, for your message in there. Yeah, there's a lot of opportunity out there in the crypto space
Yes.
and technology and social media as well, where folks are literally monetizing their brand. So, David, thank you for your contribution as well. But discipline is the key. It's not the amount of money, but it's discipline and time that creates wealth. Having a system that you stick to over a period of time, making adjustments when you need to. But there is no reason why you cannot create wealth in your lifetime. Every one of you, if you are a street sweep, let me be very clear, Jimmy. I have read multiple stories of folks who have had very modest lifestyles, making very low incomes, who end up after they leave the earth and joining the ancestors
Left a fortune behind, Tom.
left over $1 million. And we're talking, I remember reading an article years ago, Jimmy, about someone, an older lady who was a seamstress. She never made a lot of money in her life, but she was very disciplined. And at the end of her life, she left over $1 million to
Yes,
her
Tom.
family. And I don't think she ever made over 20 something thousand dollars a year.
And Tom, and this wasn't $1 million that was invested with compound interest and returns on the money. This is money they would stash in their house sometimes, or earning very meager interest by putting it in the bank.
Hello? Hello, welcome to Black Men Speak. If you could tell us where you're from and your name.
Sheree from Dallas.
Hello, Sherry. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Good. Do you have a question or a comment?
I do have a question, and I know we're running out of time, but I need to address you first.
Sure. No, 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 go right ahead. Please ask your question.
Okay. Well, I mean, I thought it was going to be for the show. Um, we're running out of time, so it's okay. I'll do it on another show.
No,
Okay.
no, Sherelle, come on now. You already dialed in. Give us a question, please.
Well, they had mentioned Big Pimpin' before, and on another show,
Right.
and the mother who had a husband who was present but not present.
Correct.
I wanted them to give that advice to young men that once they see this type of blueprint, this is not okay
No, it's not.
for young men to lead. So I thought that that was a point that I asked Tommy to address when we talked outside that has not been mentioned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very
So
much.
you
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
let them know.
I'm,
You gonna let them know?
I'm
Yes.
sorry. Repeat that again.
Are you able to let them know?
Yes. Yes. So
All right. Are
just tell
there
me
any other
yes,
questions?
Tom. We will discuss it.
Yes, we will discuss it. Are there any other thoughts or questions that you have?
Okay. I guess I'm watching the show and trying to talk at the same time.
Right. So go
So
ahead and hang up and let us address your question.
Okay. Thank you
okay.
so much.
And thank you.
All right. Okay. We want to thank Sherelle for calling in. And Tom, she's absolutely correct. We've talked about this before. There is nothing sorrier on this earth than to have a man laying up on a woman who's able bodied to go out and work and depending on her to take care of him. That is just sorry waste of cells and a body. So I would advise young people, young men, do not ever allow that to happen to you. There's nothing of nice about that. There's nothing hip about that. That's nothing to be proud of for these men who are walking around talking about pimping and big pimping and laying up on women and she works while I stay at home and ride around. Yeah, there's nothing glamorous about that. There's nothing to be proud of. That person, that man, is a sorry excuse for a man. I don't even look upon that person as being a man, Tom. I have no respect for a person who would do that. Not to say that you're not going to fall on hard times at times if you have a woman in your life or a wife, and you may need her to pick up some of the slack. But you do everything humanly possible to move heaven and earth to change that paradigm, Tom, and to change that situation where you become the breadwinner once again, and where she's not the primary caretaker and the breadwinner in that household.
Why is that important, though, Jimmy? I mean, for instance, there are some guys out there that said, well, why not? I mean, she's enabling it, so why should I spend my own money if she wants to spend hers?
Well, Tom, it's not even about spending her money versus your money. It's really about self worth and value. It's really about. Here's what it really comes down to, Tom. For me, is that there is nothing greater than the love of a woman in your life. I'm gonna tell you right now, nothing. No amount of money, no amount of precious metal. That is the greatest gift a woman can give you. And when she's having to take care of you, you're not providing any leadership, direction, or stability. Then how can she respect you, Tom? She don't really love you. You know what I mean? And if she does, that's a really warped version of love. To allow a man to be reduced to that, you want a man at a basic level to be able to provide some security for you. Women have always been security conscious. Men have always lust behind women, but part of that deal was I'm going to protect you from the elements, from other men, from wild animals. And today that protection comes in the form of financial stability. If a man can't put a roof over your head, pay some bills, provide food, and be that kind of stable rock in your life, then you don't need him. You don't need to go out and buy a man. You don't need to be paying him to be in your life. That makes him sorry, and that says a lot about you for enabling him to be a sorry intimate or instrument in your life. And especially if
All
you
right.
have kids,
Then we have another caller coming in, so I'm going to
sure.
go ahead and take the next call. Hello, this is Black Men Speak. Welcome. Who are you and where are you from?
My name is Hope Hart. I'm calling from. Hello.
Yes,
Yes,
go
we can.
ahead.
My name is Hope, Hope, and I'm from Dallas, Texas.
All right. So, what is your question or your thought?
Go ahead, Miss Hope.
Are you there?
Okay, I try to get a lot of youth to listen in tonight, and I hope some youth are listening in. Hope that's the additional viewership. I mean tonight.
Thank you.
I wanted to talk about a few of the things I don't really hear men telling men anymore, and I wish more men had called in.
Okay.
But little things like little words of wisdom, like always have some pocket money in your purse. I mean your wallet. Um, Look someone in the eye when you're speaking to them. Have a firm handshake. Um, that's the kind of thing I think a lot of it doesn't seem like a lot of that those little pieces are impression is your lasting impression. Just the little things that I used to hear growing up that men would tell boys. I don't know. See, that's one of the things that I think we're missing. Um, and then the other thing was about I guess us leading to the idea of the weekend dad because of the high amount of parents, separated parents, or two parent household. I mean, different parent households. I want to make sure that people know that being a weekend dad is not the same as being a full time dad. And I think because it's so prevalent right now in this society, we're thinking it's the same. So I call them the Chuck E. Cheese dads that just have, the children on Saturday and, a full time parent. When the child is sick and they have to go to the doctor, they never have to deal with that. They never have to take off of work for a child. If you're never the primary parent, there's a lot of things that you don't go through if you're not the primary parent. And so I think because of this, these separated homes, a lot of those things, little things that we tell men, avoid, isn't getting passed down. Um, and then the other thing is because of these, separated households, some people are thinking that, I mean, in the younger generation, they think getting married is more important or is a bigger deal than having a child. And we need to get away from that mentality of, they don't mind getting someone pregnant. But if you talk about marriage, that's a big deal. We need to reverse that thinking because having a child is more important. The legacy, the long-term effects of having a child that's unwanted or something is much more important than a marriage contract that you can get out of. You can't get out of the contract of having a child. And
Gotcha.
so that's one of the words of wisdom mentality that we need to change. And lastly, the word of wisdom that the birth control, if you're at the age of if you're having sex, that the birth control is the responsibility of the man. I mean, the long ages of saying she said she was on birth control. We should be so far from that, but that's still some
Gotcha.
boys are still relying
Okay.
on that. So
All right. Well, all
those
right.
are my words of wisdom.
We
Thank you. Bye.
thank you.
Okay.
So
Uh,
there was a lot, Jimmy. There was a lot to unpack there, and it's very obvious that we're going to. This is number one. This is not going to be our last show on this particular
no.
topic. Really, our thought on it is actually building a series of shows. Whether that's once a month, we meet every week, every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Maybe that's once a month, or periodically. We're going to have a series of shows dedicated and focus solely on having conversations with our young brothers out there. And quite frankly, Jimmy, as black men, we may need to consider having conversations from black men as it pertains to black women as well. But our primary focus are going to be young men. And so there was a lot to unpack there. There are a couple of things that we can kind of suss. I'll let you start first, and then we'll go ahead and kind of go with
Sure,
it because I
Tom.
know
The
I think we may have another caller.
okay.
They're calling on the back end. Black men speak. Thank you for calling. If you could identify yourself and where you're calling from.
Hey, it's Bray, and I'm calling from McKinney.
Okay.
Hey,
So,
Miss Bray.
I'm sorry, hope y'all miss timing. I kind of wanted to piggyback off what Miss Hope said, but and kind of what y'all were saying about hey, bringing people to meet your family, like when you're dating somebody. I feel like back in the day, we kind of steered away from it. But when you would bring people to meet your family, it would be because the family's thinking about the legacy of the family. So you don't want to just let anybody into your legacy, or to mess up your legacy, or to put a weak link in your legacy. And I feel like in the black community, especially, that's something that we've gotten away from because you just let anybody in nowadays. So that was like my first statement. And then my second, this is like a question, but I just wanted to see if there were any books that you all would suggest for like black men to read, or even like black women like myself to read, like just anything.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you very much.
tune in next week, and we will post some books that we recommend in the description, and so we will deal with that. And as far as Miss Hope comments and question, Tom, I don't think the keep some money in your pocket one is valid anymore. I don't carry money. I mean, I carry a credit card and a debit card, or a few of them, but I don't carry cash anymore. So those days are probably gone. But I agree with her that the young man should have something instrument in his pocket that allows him to get a haircut or buy lunch for himself or to sit down and relax for a moment, or if he needs a few dollars, he's not having to stress over it. The comment about the weekend dad, I agree that fathers, if they're local and they can, should be a lot more involved, especially in the when it comes to illness, managing the child affairs, school. Don't just come on a Saturday for a few hours and then drop them back off. That's just you need to become the good time parent. You're not really the true parent. So you still need to find a way to parent and co-parent, even if you're not together in the same household. Um, and I can't remember if there were, what were some of the other comments. I can't remember now. I'm thinking back.
There was one that she was just talking about how to conduct, and I think her point was maybe not just pocket money or eye contact, but it's just how to conduct yourself as a young man. And I think what Jimmy, we should quite frankly commit a show
We should.
on that topic,
Well, we
how
have
to
another one
conduct
coming up in
yourself.
October, Tom, next month.
Yeah.
Um,
But
that
we'll have a show on conducting yourself as a young man. That is a segment of what we're talking about. Of course, she had talked about the weekend dad, or what she called affectionately the Chuck E. Cheese dad.
right.
And then talking about the commitment of raising a child in relation to the marriage contract and the importance of making the investment and the commitment to co-parenting and raising a child. And I guess she is speaking as to whether you are married or even in a situation where you are not married, it needing to be a full commitment,
It does,
not just.
Tom.
And of course, Ms. Bray also brought up some books, suggestions for books that we might want to provide. And there are a lot of great books. It just depends on what the topic is. Of course, probably the most timeless book you can read that gives you all the advice you ever read, if you take the time, of course, is the
Is the
Bible.
Bible true?
One that, of course, that is a very small but classic book. It was written a long time ago, so the language is a little bit different. But as a man thinketh. It's a very small book, but it can be applicable. And it was written primarily due to the period of time in which it was written for most men, but it actually is for men and women, even though it is written in a masculine point of view. But as a man thinketh is a very good book. And when you talk about commitment, responsibility, and transformation, Jimmy, Still, my all-time favorite is the autobiography of Malcolm X. It may not pertain as to how one conducts themselves and or raising boy children, but it completely flipped the way I thought about so many different things. And when you talk about manhood, commitment, responsibility, transformation, um, literally, Jimmy, some people say, once you have conquered the fear of death, you are free. The autobiography of Malcolm X is the quintessential book when it
Hmm.
comes to responsibility and commitment, just in a different purview. But why don't we do this, Jimmy? It's 10 minutes after the hour, so we need to figure out how to close this session. And what we'll do as you're looking at the chat session to see if there are any questions
Right, they're
as
none.
to how we're going to close this one. And then when we set up future conversations, what that needs to look like. Because I think there are a lot of questions and things that we need to discuss that we just don't have time to get in probably 2 hours for that matter. And we're a little over 1 hour now.
Well, why don't we do this, Tom? I mean, we're setting our schedule for the remaining few months of the year, um, but most likely we will set aside at least, like you said, one episode a month, and we'll make that the first week of each month that we would dedicate to some topic dealing with improving the behavior, the mind, and the psyche of our young people. Starting with our young men.
Right. Because let's be very clear. And for those mothers and fathers out there who are um, maybe raising a young man that's still in the house, or you have a young person who is, not too long from being out of the house, you understand that we have very unique and curious, what some people might call dubious circumstances when it comes to just our state of living, our state of psychology, when it comes to our health. When it comes to every field of endeavor, we have a very unique set of circumstances that we have to deal with, and it's something that we need to address. And none of us individually are as powerful as we are together. And
Right.
so, we as a community of people, we as a village, we as a culture have to put our heads together to discuss our shared experiences because, quite frankly, we've all made mistakes.
Yes, we have.
But as long as we have continued to live, we've overcome them, figured out what the lesson is to be learned, and Jimmy, more importantly, shared that with other people so that those who have come behind us will not say make the same mistakes that
Sure.
we have and will be better off for it. Because quite frankly, Jimmy, we have to have someone to pass the torch to
That is
in
true,
this world.
Tom. And before we close out, one important message. If you are a parent raising young people, young children, please, please invite them to the show. Start watching the show every week. The message here doesn't change. I mean, we're not flip flopping. We are about building strong men, alpha men, not weak minded men. The advice here is always going to be the same. A year from now, if you tune in, we'll be saying the same thing, encouraging young boys to grow up to be young, strong men, because we don't have enough of them for our young women to go around, and we have to change that, Tom. So please, please, please invite other people. If you know young people, if you have children or teenagers or young people that in your life, invite them to come to the show. Invite it's once a week, 9 p.m. every Wednesday. They will come here, start watching and listening, asking questions. They will learn so much about life, Tom, and about what to do in life and how to deal with it, rather than listen to your knucklehead, bonehead friends trying to give you advice on what to do. I can tell you right there, if you go down that path, you're going to be bumping your head against that brick wall trying to get through it. We're going to tell you how to avoid the brick wall so you can go on in life and be successful.
Yeah. And understand, folks, that there is a truism, and at least I will call it a truism. Life isn't always fair, but it is what you make it.
That's right.
Life is not always fair, but it is what you make it. And so, with that being said, take some time to visualize and create your own life. Be intentional about what it is you're trying to do and why. Take advice and counsel from your
Elders.
elders,
Yes.
and quite frankly, take advice and counsel from the ancestors.
Yes.
Well, because those are the ones who have preceded us, who have
Pave the way.
been there, done that,
Hmm.
paved the way, and created the opportunities that we have today. So continue to seek guidance from the elders and the ancestors. Continue to make sure that you're doing things that, if you got to think about it twice as to whether you should do it or not, you probably shouldn't do it. And always have every company typically has a board of advisors, what some folks might call mentors, who specialize in different areas. We'll talk about this on one of our other shows as well. But have build and maintain a group of advisors, a group of mentors who are developing you, who are helping to groom you, who are giving you counsel, who are helping you to stay away from landmines. Some of these are going to be your parents or grandparents. Some of these may be your teachers. Some of these folks may be older friends, aunts and uncles. Other of these folks you may build relationships with just because of your affiliation with school, work, or whatever that happens to be. But always seek counsel from folks who are ahead of you, who are doing the things that you want to do.
All right.
Seek them. Seek their guidance. Understand it. Are they perfect? No. But I can guarantee you they're going to tell you something that's going to help you reach your goals a lot faster as compared to if you're trying to do it by yourself.
Well, Tom, you left our black men speak. Now you can always come here and get useful advice also if you don't have anyone in your life that you trust, or you just want to get a second opinion. So,
Yeah.
with that being said, Tom, we have run a little bit over, but that's fine. But you know how we do it here? We close it out with a prayer.
All right, folks, if you could bow your head, dear Lord and gracious Master, we come before you this evening, thanking you for bringing us together again, Father. We thank you for blessing us with your grace and giving us understanding, Father, understanding that your ways are not our ways, but we seek your guidance at all times, Father, that we may continue to walk in the order of the steps that you have provided for us. We ask that you would keep us safe, Father, that you would comfort our families, especially those who have lost loved ones this year and especially recently, Father. We ask you would keep us focused on the things that you would have us to do, and that you would continue to lift our heads up, that we would continue to fight the good fight, and that in some way or another we would continue to pursue your will for our lives. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. All right. Well, everyone, we will see you back here next week.